Hi, my name is Sage, and this week I wanted to do something a little different, and I'm gonna make a paper mache bat that's coming out of a canvas. I know not everyone has access to clay, but I wanted to make a Halloween craft that is accessible to everyone, so we can all do it together. And first things first, obviously I'm gonna paint the canvas black before then getting some tin foil. And the tin foil is going to be the base of my bat, and I smush some pieces together before then realizing, you know what, bats have wings and I should add some wire to make that come to life. And so I bend this wire into an M shape before then taking my scissors and breaking the wire off. So now that my wings are free, I can add some more tin foil. And what I'm gonna do with this tin foil is wrap it around the wings and the body shape just to make it more stabilized, as I'm not gonna use any glue of any sort. I'm just trying to add the wire to the body. And it works, so yay! Next, I scrunch up a piece of tin foil just out of frame, and this will be the beginning of his head. And just like the wings, I take that little piece of tin foil and wrap that and the body in more tin foil so that it's nice and secure. I'm not against using glue of any sort, it's just in my experience, the hot glue can end up not being as secure as just wrapping the tin foil repeatedly over itself. And speaking of wrapping, I use painter's tape to wrap up the tin foil bat body, as this will help the mache hopefully not be as crinkly because it's a lot smoother than the tin foil. At least, that is what's in my head. And here I rolled up some tape before then cutting it, and this will be the pointed part of his face. At least that is what I'm aiming for, because his face is kind of like a little flat, so I wanted to add some bulk there, before then beginning on wrapping everything else up in tape as well. I think this is a great idea, but I end up just using more tinfoil over his face because the back of his head's like super flat. And so my journey begins of bulking up his face until he looks like this with the tinfoil, and then I end up wrapping it up in tape all over again. Next, I take some smaller wire and cut that, as this will be the beginnings of the bones in his wings. And I begin to attach the wire by taking one end and wrapping that around the bigger wire, before then folding the smaller one onto itself and twisting that just to make it a little bit more bulkier so you can see it more. Next, I cut the end of it just because it puffs out because there's a loop. And this is what one of the bones looks like, and I bam! Make some more. The one that comes out on top is meant to be there, as bats have a bone that pokes out at the top, and one bone doesn't have a twist, but in hindsight, I think I looked at bat wings for too long and I should have just twisted that one too. But now I'm wrapping the wing with some painter's tape so the mache will have a flat surface to lay on. I also cut half oval shapes on the bottom of them as well. And I also noticed that I missed some spots with some painter's tape, so I go over them too, and now the wing looks like this. I then repeat these steps on the second wing, and bam, it's all done. I did end up wrapping the individual bones with some tape on this wing just to bulk them up. I was worried that they wouldn't show through the mache once it was on, and you may be like, Sage, are you gonna fix the other wing to match this one? And no, that would make too much sense. Instead, I got fixated on wanting to make him shorter, so I began to cut part of his body off. This took me a solid 5 minutes, but through the power of editing, bam, it's off. But it ended up being somewhat of a good thing anyway, because now he's flatter, so he'll be easier to attach to the canvas later. At least that's what I told myself. Next, I decided his belly was not bellying enough, so I take some discarded tape that I ended up having from doing the wings, and I tape that to his belly, so now he's full of fruit, probably. He's probably a fruit bat. I don't know what type of bat he is. All I know is that he's a funky, fresh little guy. Next, I fold some tape onto itself before then cutting out an ear shape to make an ear. I also cut a slit in the bottom of it just to make it a little bit more round so it can fit to his head better, but I don't know if you even have to do that, because in the end anyway, I just tape it back up and it's pretty much flat again. And when I make the next ear, I don't even do this step, so if you want to do it, then do it, but if you don't, then don't. And here I'm taping the ears to the head, and I taped them on the front and on the back on both of them, and now he looks like this. So since he's looking batty, it's now time to get the mache. And while I'm at it, I get the ripped up newspaper, and now it's time to paper mache him. And you may be like, Sage, why is your mache blue? What is going on here? For my mixture, I used 1 cup of water, 1 cup of flour, some blue food dye, and a bunch of salt. And I did not need to use 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water. I went a little bit over the top with this. I didn't know how much I was gonna need, you know, I overestimated. So if you do this and you make like this size of bat, you need like maybe 1/10 of this. And while I'm macheing, I'm just making sure that there's mache underneath the newspaper and over top the newspaper to make sure it's nice and sturdy. And if I overlap, that's all right. Everything is still a-okay. And you're probably noticing, Sage, you're using so much mache, dude. And yeah, that's my bad. I have the too much gene. So I end up taking some paper towel and dabbing it a bunch. But then I dab it too much and I end up taking some pieces off because, you know, the too much gene is strong. But then I fix those areas and then I decide, you know what? His wing is looking a little crazy. So then I take my scissors and start cutting it. I don't know when to stop. Until eventually I get him to look like this, and then I set him to let him dry overnight. And it's the next day and he's completely dried. Yay, so now I can start painting him, and since he's a bat, obviously I'm gonna start with some black first. And since this is just the first layer, I'm not too worried about every nook and cranny because I'm gonna go in with some other colors after. And speaking of other colors, I end up using some pink for the inside of his ears and some black gets into it, but I ended up liking it because it kind of gives it more depth. So I was down. And after that, I take some white and start putting it up top of the black in different areas to kind of try and mimic some fur brush strokes. I'm not doing anything too crazy because the main goal is to break up the black because he's going on a black canvas. So anywhere that I can just add some more pop of color, like on the wings with some more white, is a win for me. And next, I end up working on his eyes, and I didn't learn anything from last week's video. And I start by painting them a white, and then I add a black pupil right away. Before then trying to shade them right away as well, I wanted to add darker tones to the eyes because their eyes are black in real life, but then he kind of just looks a little crazy right now. So I give him a nose because now I have to wait for the eyes to dry before then going right back in and just painting them white all over again. So now that his eyes are done, I then go in with some umber brown and just kind of brush that all over him, again just to kind of break up the colors so it looks more interesting. Next, it's dollar store plant time. And so I take out my hot glue gun and adhere this fake plant to the canvas. And once it's all nice and secure, I then hot glue the back of the bat and press him into the canvas. And now he's also secured too. I also take some white little flowering plants from the dollar store and glue them on as well. Again, just to kind of add more of a pop of color. Plus they match the color scheme of the earthy colors. And I also add another plant that's just a different texture than the other ones to make it more visually dynamic. And that's the end of the craft. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And now it's time for the glamour shots.